Welcome to Broadcast Astrology, Insight for Humans.
This is Lisa Pesnichek.
And I'm Sarah Beckner, and we're here to deep dive into the fascinating world of astrology.
We offer blind chart readings, interviews with notable guests, and much more.
So keep listening as we bring you Insight for Humans. Hello, and welcome to Broadcast Astrology. Lisa and I are here today with a little quickie for you. Somebody wrote in with some questions, so we're going to explore the chart of Nicole today and answer some questions she has about location, about home, and also some things in terms of how we look for signatures of neurodiversity in the chart and understand cognition through the lens of the astrology chart. So, Lisa, if you want to pull up the dial, we'll start by exploring the theme of home.
We know that Nicole is an astrologer herself, and we wanted to offer a different way into a chart. And so that's kind of what we're going to do in order to address these questions. So go ahead, Sarah.
So, the first thing we think of when thinking about home, of course, is the moon. So, we have the dial up and the pointer on the moon, and we can see there that Poseidon is on a large dot. So, Poseidon, I was not surprised to see this in Nicole's chart because she wrote in with this question about home. And Moon Poseidon really is a planetary combination that suggests that there is divine longing for home on some level. And that it's very much connected with a sense of seeking, with a sense of her spirituality, her quest for ideals, her need to try to find the ideal environment to nurture herself. And we see Chiron there as well. And so there is some sort of wounding or a thorn in her side, so to speak, as far as this questing for home.
Absolutely. I also, with Moon Poseidon, for some reason, what popped into my mind with this is the Divine Mother and her healing both her own mother wound through her knowledge and her spirituality, and also bringing that to her children too. And another important element of this is that her moon is connected with the Aries point, which tells us that there's something that she brings out to the greater world around her and could be known in the world for being somebody who is a healer, who brings nurturing into the world around her and uses that as a way to heal other people. It's a really beautiful combination. And as Sarah said, I wasn't surprised to see that coming up in this chart either. So I think we're going to move this to the 360 dial as well, which gives us a couple different combinations and creates a more complex picture. We can still see that Poseidon is here on one of the dots with the moon on the arrow, but we get a more complex picture, and also Chiron is here as well. But we see that the midpoint of the moon falls on the midpoint of Uranus and Hades, which is a little bit more of a complex picture that we're seeing, which indicates an instability that could feel very heavy for Nicole in this life, especially when it comes to home and family. And part of her question is, when does it look like I would move? And how can I hear my mountain call? And we'll get more into this question and this picture around home and family for Nicole. But I think that the Uranus Hades starts to build this foundation of, yes, there's a spiritual element through the Poseidon, but that she may have had a contentious relationship with mother. There was the instability, the irregularity, the inability to really put roots down and feel fully nurtured is something that creates pain and heaviness within her.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking was, this isn't a simple question about relocation. It might appear that way on the surface, but when you pull up the chart, you can really see that there's something very foundational in terms of Nicole's story and trying to create a sense of home that feels safe to her and feels secure. I mean, when we see Chiron brought into the picture, we know that this is a bigger piece of our story is tending to this wound. So part of this wound has to do with potentially the early childhood environment, the domestic story, the relationship with mother, and some that made her fundamentally feel a lack of control or that things might have been unstable, or they might have been unstable in a way that made her seek control in very specific ways. And so there's part of me that thinks that just a simple relocation is not going to solve the foundational issue of wanting a sense of stability at home. And where did we see, Lisa, the picture that brought in? I think we saw Pluto Admetos on one of the charts because I thought that was pretty profound because that suggests that there is this sort of concentric energy around the home, something zeroing in on home, something where her thoughts are going round and round the home. And in a way, it says something about a natural course of slow development, slow transformation in terms of healing that wound and ultimately finding some place where she feels safe and she feels that sense of home.
And I think this kind of pulls in what her second question was, which was, where do you find the dynamics of fear or not feeling safe on Earth in my chart? And when you look at her regular chart, you'll see that she has a close conjunction of Pluto to her natal ascendant. And that on its own can indicate that in her early childhood year, that there was something that put her in the mindset that she needed to reach for control in some way. And this picture that I have up here is the midpoint between Pluto and the ascendant. The distance between them is about a degree. So they're very close together. And this is what Sarah was pointing to, which is Admito. Pluto has some levels of survival, of fear in the environment, just not feeling safe, and also need to have heightened vigilance and control in the environment around an individual. And we see here that your ascendant Pluto is on the midpoint of Uranus. And Uranus Zeus is, while Zeus can be quite nice in combination with Uranus, can roll in and emphasize fear-based, anxiety-based circumstances within one's environment, which is creating an environment where Nicole may have felt like she needed to clamp down and have some sort of control over that environment. And I think the Admetos could indicate and be illustrating that she feels stuck in this pattern of chaos and then control. And she might not know how to get out of that sometimes. Like Sarah was, this question seems to be much more broad and deep than just, when am I going to move?
Yeah, when I look at this picture on the dial, I see a deep sense of restlessness that
Yes.
Uranus shows. And at the same time, like you said, something's contracting in, like that admetos is inhibiting the natural capacity for Mars to thrust itself out into the world, to go after what it desires, to make things happen. And admetos is keeping it kind of inside. And that could even be on the mental plane where there's all of this thought around relocation. There's dreaming of the ideal home. There's wanting to get a sense of the perfect home with Sidon in the previous pictures, and just a deep sense of restlessness around home in this quest for really safety, feelings of safety, which was one of the things that Nicole brought. Her second question was about finding the dynamics of fear or not feeling safe in the chart. And I think you answered that, Lisa, in talking about Pluto on the ascendant with these other factors, that it might be familiar, that constant movement might be familiar, that instability might be familiar to her. And so somehow that can get embedded as a sense of home when you've got Poseidon really reaching for an ideal and something that feels more safe.
Yes. And in her natal chart, she has Moon square Uranus, which reiterates the same signature that we're seeing in much more detail here. I find the people who have Moon Uranus tend to be finicky in their lives in that things never seem quite right. I've worked with several people who create chaos in their life as a means of nourishing themselves because their inner patterns, their memory pattern, are patterns of chaos and upheaval, or even, and it might not even be that extreme. It could just be that when she came home, she didn't know what to expect. So she had to kind of be on alert. It's also a signature for anxiety. And I think that this signature as well, because the moon is tied into it, could also point towards having to deal with feelings of anxiety, struggling to find the calm within herself as well as in the environment around her. And there can be this internal, external experience of that where internally you feel unsettled and you want to feel settled, but you're also simultaneously creating environmental conditions where you're not settled. And so it can be this reciprocal patterning in circumstances such as this.
Right. And in one of these pictures on the 90-degree dial, I believe we have Uranus Hades equals the moon. And so the Uranus keeps showing up again with this question over and over. And I just got the sense when I saw Uranus Hades that it might just fizzle out really quickly. She may just find herself like dreaming the dream and then becoming dissatisfied with that. Just as quickly as it emerges, it wanes. And so, what would the medicine for this be? Because the chart is really asking her on some level to tend to the wound around the home, to concentrate the energy on the home. She also has sun and on the IC, in her in her traditional natal chart. And so we know that there's something about how she's expressing herself and showing up and the warmth and the vitality and sort of things concentrating around the home in her lifetime.
Yes. And I think we spoke to this earlier, Sarah, is in her natal chart, she has a lot going on with her Mercury. And as you can see here, there's a strong Mercury Saturn opposition, which can be a very serious mind, a mind that is logical, but it also indicates somebody who could be their own worst critic. And no matter what they do, they might feel like they're never doing it well enough. And that could be their own voice. It could also be the voice of people who they have grown up with, like their parents, that sort of thing. And we see this also here with Ascendant Hades, which shows that part of this picture, I think, states that she has a very critical mind towards her own self. It might feel like she has to continually create the chaos and change and switch directions because her early childhood environment may have not been entirely kind to her. And with Mars, Zeus also involved in this, it looks like it really hurt her. It could be a way that she feels tormented within herself on some level, like hypervigilance, feeling as though she has to pay attention to the details, even though they might be constantly changing.
Yeah. Vigilance, obsession, even for
Yeah,
one with that.
obsession.
And also just that dichotomy between those forces of this is her Mercury. Again, this is a planet that has a lot to do with expression and who we are. And with that Mars Zeus, hey, there's a lot in there, a lot of thinking, a lot of feeling, a lot of passion, a lot going on. And then Saturn's putting the lid on it. She's delaying things, making things hard to express and manifest. And so, yeah, I think all of this is playing out in that story a little bit. And, the last question Nicole brought to us was if you were to describe me as a force of nature, what would you choose and why? And we gave this a little thought. And it's interesting because in her natal chart, from a traditional perspective, Nicole has no water in her chart other than the planet Uranus, an outer planet. But Lisa and I both got this feeling of sort of like the before the storm, like something electric, something sizzling, which made me think of ozone, that kind of place you're in when you can smell the storm coming, but it hasn't
Yes.
arrived. The tornado hasn't touched down. And there's something about all the electricity in this chart and the charge and the capacity for wind and shifting it that just made me feel like ozone.
Yes. Yeah. And also, what I'm thinking of too is the excitement as well as a little bit of fear and not knowing whether you should go seek shelter or just stand in the middle of it. It's a very exciting chart. And you mentioned medicine. Sarah. And I think that's why I wanted to bring up this Mercury, is because she also asked about neurodiversity in her chart. And I think that kind of plays in with her not feeling safe on Earth. And you have a very creative mind, Nicole. You have a mind that's capable of bringing many things into manifestation. And you have a lot of drive behind making that happen as well. And I wonder if you're trying to fit things into a box that isn't yours, if you're trying to live up to the expectations of those who aren't yours. And I would encourage you to make a pact with yourself to find your one path and maybe stick with it for longer than you might otherwise. Mars Zeus can be very charged, and with Uranus involved in the ways that we were looking at before, there's this potential for you to shift gears quite a lot. And I encourage you to trust yourself, to turn off the negative voice that might follow you around, and trust that your inner voice, your inner knowing, is just that, it knows. And you have Mercury Cupido here as well, which signifies a creative mind, beautiful words, the ability to take the logical steps that Mercury and Saturn can provide and the motivation that Mars, Zeus can provide, and bring it into beautiful form and share it with other people. And there's other aspects of your chart that point towards the same thing as well. As you sit in your ozone environment where everything's shifting and enlivened, trust the excitement within you that it's a safe place to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Use the Saturn constructively. We often talk about the light and the shadow potentials of these planets with Mars. It can be anger, it can be warfare, it can also be drive, motivation, the ability to assert yourself. And same thing with Saturn. Saturn might be the old voices of authority in your head, making you doubt yourself or not trust your own point of view. But you could also use Saturn constructively and give your ideas bones and shape and commit to them long enough to give them full expression. You know, even the dream of having a home or making the home you have a place that allows you to really express yourself, or finding creative ways to bring more excitement into your home, into where you live, to make it exciting for yourself. So, yeah, this is fun. Nicole has a beautiful and fascinating chart, so many dynamics, and I appreciate her letting us explore it today. Hopefully, we answered your questions, Nicole.
Yes,
Write us back if you have more.
Thank you so much. I hope that you learned something. I think astrology usually just reminds us of who we are. Yeah, hopefully there was some useful nuggets. We really appreciate you sharing, Nicole. And for anybody else who has any questions about their own chart or astrology in general, we would love to hear them. Send them our way.
That's all for now. We'll see you next time. Thanks so much.
Bye, everybody. As always, thanks for listening to Broadcast Astrology Insight for Humans. And if you're so inclined, like, follow, and subscribe, and please don't be a stranger.
Signing off for now. Until next time, humans, keep your gaze upwards on the stars and be well. We look forward to sharing more soon.